The following program contains scenes of violence, coarse language, and is intended for an older teen audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
So begins one of the longest-running gags in the longest-running sitcom in American history. A simple joke, gently mocking children for enjoying mindless cartoons full of meaningless, non-sequitorial violence, which, the longer it runs, the more it becomes a celebration of meaningless, non-sequitorial violence. Also, I'm pretty sure that cutaway format gave Seth MacFarlane the idea for his entire career, but that's a subject for another video that someone else will make, probably. I love Itchy and Scratchy because it's always funny when the mouse put the bomb in the cat's mouth and it go boom. But also because, like many things in The Simpsons' 3-decade history of dropping monkey fingers on typewriter keys, it speaks to a near universal truth of human experience. Namely, that it's always funny when the mouse put the bomb in the cat's mouth and it go boom. Is this healthy? Screw off! You're not my mom, and even if you were, there's some tension there. But also, screw off, you're not my therapist either. And, I don't know if you've noticed from looking around, but humans don't generally ask themselves if something's good for them before they decide if it's a good time or not. There's people whose hobby is jumping out of airplanes, so get your pearls out of here, Marge, or at least let go of them. Obviously, with the exception of one headshot in April 1945, real violence is not good. But at the same time, many of us good, upstanding citizens clearly have a craving for it deep in the recesses of our lizard brains. And the animated alternative scratches that itch in ways the real thing never could. Not just funny ways, by the way. Humor's certainly a part of this, and will be in an increasingly morbid manner, no matter how brutal the cartoons we're talking about get, which is way more brutal than you can probably imagine. Because beyond allowing for increasingly extreme takes on the classic man get hurt fall down, artistic renditions of the horrific conditions to which the human body can be subjected allow us to explore and externalize aspects of the human condition that are messy, both literally and figuratively. If you're new here because I cleverly baited you with all this mainstream cartoon iconography, this is the part where I'm legally obligated to inform you that I am a professional anime fan. Sorry, doors are already locked. You're in here for the long haul. Since you're not going anywhere, you should know that the video you're trapped in is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Are you tired of running into region locks when you're trying to stream movies and anime? With ExpressVPN's virtual private network, you can hop right over them and never look back. Or maybe tunneling under them's a better metaphor, as ExpressVPN's high-speed servers in 94 different countries mask more than just your location when you connect to them. They encrypt all of your browsing data to hide it from the prying eyes of ISPs, governments, advertisers, and hackers. You may be feeling invincible with that vaccine pumping through your veins now, but without ExpressVPN, the next time you're out on public Wi-Fi, you'll be leaving yourself just as vulnerable as you were going to the grocery store in 2020. I never leave the house without it. Of course, I almost never leave the house, but even then, ExpressVPN's region unlocking powers constantly come in handy. If you live in America and this video puts you in the mood for some cartoon carnage, it takes but one click to set your Netflix region to Australia and get watching South Park's classic anime action parody, Good Times with Weapons. Or you could switch to the UK if you're in the mood for some Tokyo Ghoul. In either case, to find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free, visit expressvpn.com/basement or click the link in the doobly-doo today. Now, if you ask any of the regulars around you, they'll tell you my favorite area of fixation when it comes to anime analysis after openings is fight scenes. I am endlessly fascinated by the ways shonen battle series use their action to tell stories and reflect both external and internal character conflicts, but this video isn't about that, because I've already made a bunch of videos about that, playlist in the cards. There's far more to foul play in anime than shown in battles, as anyone who's seen Made in Abyss can attest. Just as animation has removed our body's limitations from the ultimate equation of how to build a better wrestling match, it allows us to highlight, expose, and exploit those limitations and mortal weaknesses at a level of excruciating specificity that would be not impossible to capture on camera in real life, but certainly very illegal. And even with modern CGI allowing live-action horror to overcome those limitations, it's not always as affecting as more obviously animated body horror. Less lifelike animation, aided out of necessity by your imagination, can go a step beyond simply showing you a puddle of gore at the edge of the uncanny valley and amplify the underlying feeling of pain behind that carnage to inject it directly into your mind. Looking at Rico's comically swollen, terrifyingly discolored lump of a half-severed limb makes me feel more of the raw discomfort I felt when my own 5-year-old arm bent in a spot it wasn't supposed to than any more supposedly realistic fake busted limb I've seen in anything. Something about seeing that in a playful, adventurous setting makes it harder to watch than everything that happens to Ethan Winter's arms put together. And Capcom fucking hates that guy's hands, man. Of course, all video game violence is itself an extension of cartoon violence, just as all good video games are interactive cartoons. And all the bad video games are cartoon casinos for kids. Don't get me wrong, I love those. Overwatch's pretty colors and meticulously engineered Skinner box design made the spend money part of my brain go brr for a while there, but I'm an adult who can and should be expected to take account for his own bad decisions. Pokemon Go shouldn't be allowed to have gacha with extra steps in it. Sorry, didn't mean to get political there, or off topic. For even longer than they've been innovating in ways to allow children to gamble with their parents' money, games have been leading the bloody charge of advancements in animated assault, at least in America, and they've stirred up way more controversy for it than the gambling thing, somehow. From the wanton chaos of Grand Theft Auto to the unrelenting brutality of Mortal Kombat's fatalities to the composed, calculated, ironic accidents of Hitman, I love graphic video game graphics in all their forms, but at the same time, I do think the AAA industry's slavish devotion to visual realism constrains it in a way. I've always preferred the over-the-top reality-bending insanity of a good anime fighter finisher to your average fatality, and even as games with lots of blood in them go, I tend to prefer the artistically stylized splatter of something like Ape Out, or at least the chunkier cartoon gibs of Hat Simulator, to more grounded depictions of gore. If someone made, like, a Hitman game, but it's cel-shaded and all the accident kills are bloodier Tom and Jerry gags, I would play that forever. I would never deny that there is incredible artistry in the meticulous diligence with which AAA 3D modelers, animators, and shader creators work to recreate the precise viscosity and glistenosity of real human inside bits through pure math, but it never quite hits the same as seeing a less high-fidelity artist viscerally render the most visceral rending they can imagine as best as their flawed human hands can manage it. If you want to see that at its very finest, you'll need to look back to a time when a few red pixels would have been enough to bump a game's whole age rating, if they had age ratings back then, the 80s and early 90s, and the height of anime's OVA scene. If you've never heard the term before, OVA is short for Original Video Animation, and refers to anime that were released straight to VHS and Laserdisc, usually 1 or 2 episodes at a time. These should not be confused with the American concept of straight-to-video animation, cheap, lazy Disney sequels and stuff like that. OVAs were expensive and made to get the most out of fancy home theater setups of their era. They sold at around $70 per hour of content to a niche market of AV enthusiast otaku and video rental shops who craved quality first and foremost. Quantity be damned. Where the vast majority of anime are designed to sell you some other product, be it books, figures, or CDs, OVAs of this era were made mainly to sell themselves. It's the one period of anime industry history where the profitability of releases was more or less directly tied to their perceived quality. And that rare economic space was a playground for animators looking to flex their creative muscles and push artistic boundaries, particularly when it came to violence, sex, and the myriad ways in which they can interact. Sometimes, like in Yoshiaki Kawajiri's Wicked City, these elements are used to explore uncomfortable, taboo topics in interesting ways. Most times, like in Yoshiaki Kawajiri's Demon City Shinjuku or Goku Midnight Eye, it feels more like the animators are pouring their sexiest nightmares directly into your TV at stunningly high frame rates and in vivid illustrated detail, pushing the messier limits of the human form purely for the fun of it. Personally, I love both types of OVA. Obviously, I always prefer it when a work of art can leverage exploitative imagery to talk about stuff that it can't address in any other way, but the general lack of that doesn't make Demon City Shinjuku's fighting and murdering any less gorgeous to look at, or detract from the influence its use of color and framing still has on anime action today. And I certainly don't need to see some greater symbolic depth in a half-motorcycle, half-jaguar cyborg stripper who shoots lasers from her mouth to appreciate how they animated the ever-loving hell out of that incredibly strange and cool idea. The OVA version of JoJo Part 3 Stardust Crusaders is much more fixated on making the bloody action bits of that manga as bloody and actiony in motion as possible than it is on telling the full story seen in its longer, modern anime equivalent, and that undoubtedly makes it harder to appreciate as a standalone work for newcomers, but at the same time, if you already like JoJo and you haven't seen the OVA Dio fight yet, you need to change that the second this video is over. If you have friends and drinks handy, its English dub is an especially good bad time. On the other hand, Masaki Yuasa's longer, more modern take on Devilman actually manages to be more intense in places than its older OVA equivalent, though as an original net animation, it is in more of a position to take such creative liberties. Both it and Japan Sinks 2020 really push the bloody envelope wherever they can, while using that horrific imagery to comment on the nature of humanity and Japanese society, though neither quite captures the special sticky feeling of these straight-to-video cult classics I've been talking about. But then, the only ONA I've seen come close to that is LaShawn Thomas's Yasuke, also recently released on Netflix, which takes clear inspiration from the OVA scene, along with Chanbara kung fu films and black cinema of the 80s, to form its fantastical take on the true-life story of the eponymous Black Samurai. I know some folks are bothered by all the liberties it takes with that story and how the show doesn't explain how there are mecha in feudal Japan, but if you can look past those anachronisms and want to vibe with some vibrant violence, it is a very good time. That said, if that is what you're looking for, neither Yasuke nor anything I've mentioned previously in this video can really match the peak of retro cartoon carnage, the apex of 80s anime experiments in graphic imagery that is Akira. Akira is a symphony of syncopated animated savagery. From the moment its rad cyberbikes, sadly sans card game attachments, get rolling, every frame is spent either winding up anticipation to or following through on the impact of the next big blow. First fist against flesh, then pipe against pavement, motorcycle tread against yuppie diner head, hover scooter minigun spray against bloody revolutionary ragdoll, orbital laser against godly psychic force, and at last, after one brief, much-needed moment of rest, the literal Big Bang against a whole new universe. It has a lot of frames to spend on those hits, too. When it released, Akira was the most expensive anime movie ever made, and that money, coupled with the animator's dedication, ensures that every character we see on screen is constantly moving. Most of them towards some grisly end or another, with plenty of bumps and bruises along the way. And since not every part of the film can be a fight, that would just be exhausting, it places savage slapstick sight gags in the background of almost all the parts that aren't. Sometimes it'll thread such jokes through the background of whole scenes, like when that terrorist tried to blow up the police station with our heroes in it using what turned out to be a dud grenade. After his face gets pasted against the pavement with way more force than was needed to detain him, some stuffy station house suit casually carries off the discarded explosive casing, eyeing it with a dumbfuck curiosity that tells us he doesn't fully grasp how all the parts of it that go boom are still very much inside it. And sure enough, minutes later, as Kaneda and the capsules are exiting the premises, looking for more trouble to dip their dicks into, that dummy sets it off. And while up close I'm sure the scene of that explosion is a nightmare, all the way out here where that bomb is all but long forgotten, it's just hilarious. It can be pretty funny up close too, though, at least from the perspective of some of the characters. Like Kaisuke, who you can tell quite enjoys watching another punk's motorcycle crash through the thin pane of fancy restaurant window that the disaffected patrons within somehow thought separated them from the blood-stained world in which he and his friends are forced to live. Violence defines Akira's entire military state of a cyberpunk dystopia. Even the respectable parts of it. It is both the sole means by which Kaneda and his downtrodden teen compatriots can grasp at anything resembling freedom, and the sole avenue of communication by which authority chooses to exert its overwhelming control over their lives. Though they do it more through police brutality than systemic child abuse as the story goes on, much like how that progresses in real life. And hey, at least these kids get to get theirs back by brutalizing some polices along the way. Something which the movie manages to make feel appropriately traumatic the first time they have to do it, though it gives them very little time to process that trauma before more blood needs to be shed. Akira just keeps pouring on more and more gunshots and gore in a hypnotic, never-ending flow of OP quality animation, making the destruction denser and denser as Tetsuo's powers attack his body and mind, Kaneda fights to find him, the cops and military gun down the people they're supposed to protect, the revolutionaries fight to stop them, and a bunch of thoughtless bureaucrats senselessly send their own citizens to be slaughtered by a natural disaster that they totally could have contained if they weren't too busy getting ready to make bank on the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Good thing that's nothing like real life. Eventually, under the weight of this endless violence, the entire turbulent megacity of Neo-Tokyo collapses in on itself into a literal singularity, and leaving our beleaguered teen heroes an infinity away to recuperate and rebuild what all the stupid old men destroyed, it explodes forth into a whole new universe of possibilities, probably violent ones. Akira's brutal imagery makes me feel a lot of different things a lot of different ways, but toward the end, more than anything, it makes me feel small, helpless against the infinite elemental chaos that brought everything around me into being. Yet, at the same time, it conveys in Kaneda, the capsules, and Kei's well-earned final moment of respite how much that small stuff still matters, ultimately. Invincible, a cool dark western superhero series on Amazon Prime that you should go watch now if you want to avoid major spoilers, made me feel similar things in its similarly apocalyptic finale. Only here, instead of an awakened Esper tearing up the downtown core, it's Omni-Man, a mask-off Man of Steel analog, voiced gloriously by J.K. Simmons, smushing people like the flies they are to him just to punctuate some points to his half-human son Mark about the ultimate cosmic-scale supremacy and importance of the Krypton fascist galactic empire from which they hail. The sheer scale and speed of this rampage, the way whole blocks and train cars full of people get all but instantaneously ground down into blood smoothies by powers that, applied more peacefully and precisely, can't even save one building full of us, certainly sells how fragile and impermanent we really are, demonstrating our lack of long-term worth in a way that makes perfect sense to a Saiyan-style one-man planet conqueror who's seen hundreds of alien populations go similar ways in 1,000+ years of his life, but not so much to his son. And even as Omni-Man is turning all these individuals into a numbing blur of blood and gore, acting like he's above it all, the damage he's doing to Mark specifically eats at him and ultimately impresses on him how much even a couple measly decades of life can really mean to the people actually doing that living. This isn't the first time he's felt this contradiction between his values and internalized Viltrumite propaganda. He couldn't bring himself to hurt his wife, Deborah, or his old drinking buddy and costume designer, Art, either, even when he knew they were onto him for slaughtering the Great Value Justice League. And now that he actually needs to do what needs to be done to his own son, he has no choice but to face how the insignificant flicker of galactic time he's spent on Earth has really changed him. And he's forced to leave Earth entirely as the person he's become realizes he can't follow through on the mission the person he was came here to do. It's a gut-wrenching conclusion to both his and Mark's arcs, but also weirdly beautiful. There's nothing quite like a near-immortal psycho Superman learning what love means and leaving us alone to put our place in the universe in real perspective, you know? And that's especially weird because beautiful's about the last word I'd use to describe this show. Its CGI background characters make the ones we see in most anime look good by comparison, and honestly, at the best of times, it's barely on par production-wise with the straight-to-video end of the DC animated universe. The only thing Invincible really has going for him over other animated American superheroes, then, is the sheer amount of blood that gets on his costume and the title screen. Yet, that's enough for it to make an impact, episode after episode, with bloody punchlines to superheroic slapstick and commentary on the human cost of conflict, the trauma of being a hero that this genre tends to paper over. Not to mention regular power-scale demonstrations of how fucked everyone's gonna be when Omni-Man finally stops playing. But also, through it all and amid the slaughter, there are repeated, quiet affirmations of how much more there is to life than superhero fights and empire building. Affirmations that wouldn't hit nearly as hard as they do without all the grisly reminders of how quickly and easily it all can end. Animation lets us take the impossible, the incomprehensible and inconceivable, and put it on film. It can make accessible ideas our brains weren't really built to process and help us grapple with the most hostile parts of our reality without putting anyone in real danger, besides the animators facing the long-term effects of crunch. If this video only impresses one thing upon you, let it be that cartoon violence is a powerful artistic tool that we should all better appreciate and respect. Also, it's hilarious. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.